वेलकम टू थिंक फास्ट वेर आज की ताज़ा खबर ये है कि एलोन मस्क पागल हो गया है। क्या हो रहा है ट्विटर पे? ट्विटर ब्लू, ट्विटर ओरिजिनल्स, ट्विटर आफ्टरथॉट. Have you subscribed yet? 613 rupees or 800 rupees, 650 rupees per month, something like that. It's more expensive in India, by the way.
No, I have not. But though, I mean, to be fair, chances are I actually will. It's just, and again, this is maybe like a longer conversation for another day. But what are your 2 cents? Would you subscribe for Twitter?
I actually haven't gone on to Twitter that much lately. I've spent a lot more. I feel that as time has gone by, my predominant time is spent between YouTube and Instagram,
Yeah.
and actually a lot more YouTube nowadays. And I just find Twitter to be like, I mean, Twitter you go when obviously everyone's going and crying when India lost semifinals,
Yeah.
or anything else. Only for those moments, or I just go to the Explore tab. But I've not been spending as much time on Twitter. I still have my thoughts on like what it eventually will become, but let's see what he does with it. So I'm still on the fence on this one.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'll take that back. I wouldn't have minded subscribing to, Twitter pre-Elon. I just don't know how stable this company is going to be,
Yeah,
given that he's making all sorts of like crazy claims about bankruptcy and like running this shit to the ground. And he's been firing people left, right, and center. I think he fired someone from their security team, what's it called, moderation team. He seems to like be on a tirade to burn this shit down to the ground, and only Elon really knows what he's doing at this point in time.
and also like if you look on the other side, Tesla's losing their stock value, right? Tesla had a
Hmm.
bad this thing, and their stock value has really kind of gone down. I still go back to one thing: this guy should be building rockets, looking at the EV market, building batteries. Why is he
Yeah.
wasting his time and headspace on Twitter? But then let that sink in is
it's
what I
it's
would.
it's it's called the fragile male ego, Varun. Fragile male ego. आप नहीं समझोगे. Deal.
मेरा
Look at the
फ्रेजाइल नहीं
rest
है,
of
मेरा
us.
मेल ईगो ही नहीं है.
That is true. What a sannyasi you become. But I don't want to talk about Elon because I am so bored of him
Yeah,
and
I'm
people
so sick
talking
of
about
like
him.
literally, and to all listeners and viewers, like we literally said, okay, do we talk about Twitter again? And we were like, how much will we talk about Twitter? But again, we started off talking about
Yeah.
Twitter. But what else has happened? What else has happened?
So many things, and also nothing at all. Ladies and gents, this week has been a little slow. So in case the episode isn't spicy enough, it's not us. It is this week. But there have been pieces of news such as Adidas has officially announced that they will continue to use Easy Designs even after their split with Yay. Do you want to give us a legal tippany on how this works?
So when I saw this news, I was like, I've spent too much time reading contracts, and at some point, IP laws are interesting, and especially any kind of contracts are interesting. And most contracts, I'm gathering this one we had that too, have a clause where if one of the people who've signed that agreement does something that just causes a lot of damage, like it's causing irreparable damage to both part to the property concerned,
Yeah.
then at some point the rights can differ, is what might have happened. Or
I'll say this, which is, I think at the end of the day, what all of us want is to live a good life, keeping his persona and how he's trying to manufacture his image aside for a second. What I will always respect, irrespective of what my opinion of the person may or may not be, is at the end of the day, all of us, want to just be able to live a good life and provide for people who we care about and who we love. And honestly, if in his case, this is what it takes to get to that end, right? Building up this caricature, building up this personality, using that as a way to monetize. Because I don't know what's happening with his third unicorn
yeah,
startup or whatever else,
yeah.
it is that he said he was launching. Good on him. Do you know what I mean? Like who are we to judge how he makes money? Let him make money the way he can potentially help himself.
Fair point. Fair points, my lord. Fair points. What else is happening? And we're not talking about Twitter anymore. So we will skip past all Twitter stories. I can never pronounce this brand right, and it will sound obscene. So you will say, who has bought Tom Ford?
Estee Lauder. How can you not pronounce this brand right?
When I say it,
Estee
it
Lauder.
sounds like something else.
What do you say,
Este?
please? Estee Lauder.
What does that sound like?
Oh my God. Are you making fun of your own South Indian accent, Varun, at this
It
point?
sounds like that whenever I say it. So I'm like, I
Oh
don't say the
my
brand name.
God.
Just
Only
obscene.
one of the best performing, companies of
Essay
all
louder.
time in the. Yes, there you go. Good job. Good
Didn't
job.
that sound
So,
exactly
guys,
like what I thought it would sound like? No?
no, it
Okay.
did not. I think you're
Fair enough.
manifesting weird things in your head. But Estee
Fair.
Lauder is nearing its $2.8 billion acquisition of Tom Ford. Just other quick piece of news: Zomato is working on a new loyalty program after shutting Pro and Pro Plus. Reliance is apparently going to be buying Metro AG's India business for only 500 million euros, which is, I'm assuming, 1:1 from a dollar basis right now.
Hmm.
Three quick couple of things, and then we'll get to your latest discovery of the past week. Sequoia India, like everyone else, has also been selling their stake in IPO'd companies, and a company that IPO'd last year was Indigo Paints, and Sequoia's made a sweet 210 crores off of that. Sale. Lenskart's revenue have jumped 66%. Paytm's Q2 revenue has been up by 76%, and really showing that their focus on credit, being a fintech company, being a lending company, seems to be really reaping benefits. All in all, I don't know if you've been tracking Paytm's performance, but they really seem to be improving with every quarter. Have you been seeing them at
Hmm.
all, or not so much?
I feel that ever since they've kind of gone back to change the razor focus on what they started off with and not trying to
Basics, yeah.
become this mega app,
E-commerce.
becoming all those things, it's just been a good story all around.
Yes, Queen. And your last story for intro
So,
section.
WhatsApp announced WhatsApp communities. When basically them trying to do Discord or Telegram basically on the app. It's obviously not a new feature, but I feel at least from an Indian context, it's super interesting because one of the big questions you hear around, especially if you're a creator, if you're anybody else saying that, okay, um, what because Discord becomes too complicated for people to use. People end up using Slack or just WhatsApp groups, which are supremely complicated in that sense. Could this be a solve for the Indian market? Is the question. But
Mm-hmm.
then that brings in a whole different, as always for Meta, you're letting people create communities on WhatsApp. As it is, the biggest problem on WhatsApp is the kind of stuff that is shared on WhatsApp. So can you
Yep.
imagine the clusterfuck this can become? So there's the bad side of it, but also the good side is that could this actually be the best possible way to build a community in India? Because WhatsApp is,
Hmm.
I would say, the default mode of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see how this rolls out. But what
What
are
is your
we talking
perspective on
about
this?
this
What is
week?
this?
I
What is
have
this?
no
No Vishesh
perspective.
Tippani on WhatsApp communities.
I have many other Vishesh Tippanis coming up. Hence, I'm trying to fast forward to my Vishesh Tippani
Done, done.
segment.
So, what are we talking about this week? We're talking about Zomato's quarterly reports. We actually had a call out on comments from an announcement by the MyGate founder because we spoke about MyGate last week. So, we'll just quickly tap into that one. This is interesting initiative, which is about Mumbai unicorn founders have come together and united to change the perspective and just like generally making Bombay more, and it's about time, more attractive for the tech space. Um, these massive layoffs that Meta happened, but it's more about the letter and how it was done. Again, like we've had a
Yeah.
lot of these happening, but it's about how it's done and how that's kind of played out across the board. The story everyone's talking about across the world, the FTX
Wild.
saga, the crypto darling has just like crashed, not even crashed in, but I don't know what to call this, global meltdown. Like I don't know what you call it.
Dude, this is
And a
like
couple more
bad news for
pieces
crypto. Yeah.
and a few more pieces in there. So we'll do all of that, but before that, we can take a break while I figure out why my laptop is not charging. Be right back with Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast, where I finally figured out how to charge my laptop. It's called move it to a different USB slot. And after that,
Congratulations.
amazing information. What information on Zomato? What have you ordered today on Zomato, Suchita? What is your weekend order?
I have ordered nothing on Zomato today. By the way, I've really like unrelated note, and I'm just gonna bore you guys with these unnecessary details. But like, I genuinely don't like eating outside food. It's like a thing.
Really?
You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know what it is. Like, I either have a very sensitive stomach, but without segueing into my
I had
gut
butter
issues
chicken
and
yesterday. It
get.
was amazing from outside.
Okay, guys. By the way, one thing that I learned about meeting Varun in real life is he eats like a mofo. I am not even joking. I have not seen anyone house a pizza as fast as Varun has, slash did when we hung out last Saturday. And holy shit, you guys don't even want to know how skinny Varun is. I thought I was thin. And then I meet Varun, and I'm just like, oh, you've eaten
It's
maida
called
cheese.
having good gut health. It's called having good gut health.
Yes, मुझे भी दे दो. But okay, guys, getting back to Zomato's quarter report after digressing into our eating habits and how,
Gut health.
fit slash unfit slash gut health we have or we don't have. Just a couple of quick, numbers. Zomato Limited's consolidated net loss for the September quarter narrowed to 251 crores from 430 crores a year ago. Revenue from operations has increased by 62.2% year on year to about 1,661 crores. Adjusted for Blinkit, the revenue grew 48% year on year, which translates to an annualized revenue of 1.05 billion. And obviously, you guys can do a quick Google search and read more about the Zomato quarterly results. I'm not going to bore you with specifics, but I think one big change that Zomato's made after reading the room is they have to get their numbers in tip top shape if they want their, uh, company to stand for, count for anything. And I think
Yeah.
both in Zomato and Paytm's case, you're seeing the company fundamentally do all the right things, right? Fundamentally sort of stack up in the right way. You saw Zomato curb down on giving freebies, deals, discounts that they aggressively gave when they were acquiring consumers. And I think it's good to see, them read the room. But the one question that I have for you is, whether we like it or not, this whole food delivery, quote unquote, food tech space is one that's been mired by plowing money into the
Mm.
market and then acquiring consumers, keeping them hooked through launching new features, this, that, and the other. And Swiggy really seems to have taken, their product, their, roadmap up 10 notches while Zomato's been navigating this, booth of like profitability.
Yeah.
What is your, keeping Zomato's performance aside, what is your take on how they are faring against Swiggy, maybe just as a consumer? And the second is, where do you think Zomato goes from here?
I feel that companies make bets, and I feel
Hmm.
Zomato made this bet of like, okay, there's eating, there's ordering in, and there's dining out, and that
Yeah.
was pretty much what they stuck with. And they tried to add more things. They went credit. If I remember, there was a credit card in there. There were a lot of other things in there, right? But I feel Swiggy took the right bet with Instamart. The more I
Yeah.
talk to people who are, let's say, in a Bangalore and a few other places, this seems to be like the de facto platform to use for that. Although I use Dunzo more than Instamart,
Hmm.
and that's been my go-to for a while now. And I feel that bet really paid off for Swiggy, where people were going there more regularly, because you
Yeah.
you order in food a few times a day. But if you are like someone who's just getting stuff for home, just the Instamart experience is something much simpler. And even now, when I look at a Zomato, you seeing Zomaland having its own tab in there. But I'm like, Zomaland's like an event you do, not like all the time. I think they've just added it right now because it's happening.
Yeah.
It's still kind of, I feel they miss the point of, if you are a delivery platform, if you
Hmm.
focus on what all you can deliver, if you already have the delivery people, etc. I feel that's really the right bet. And also the UI, there's this, it's like I would say like sky and land
Hmm.
difference between, just like
Hmm.
Swiggy is so much more easy to use. Although I use Zomato a lot because I've just had too many past orders. It's easy for me to just go and repeat orders. I'm that person who repeats the same order most times. But I feel that Swiggy's got that UI part and just generally what they build onto the platform part,
Hmm.
more on point than ever.
Yeah. No, I think, and I just wanna, I tweeted about this earlier this week, but it's it is so difficult, right? I'm opening the Swiggy app as we speak, but I don't think people understand how difficult it is to marry these multiple different use cases, right?
Yeah.
The psychological trigger for ordering food is very different from the psychological trigger for going out for ordering groceries, so on and so forth. On Zomato's app, with all due respect, it just seems like a little bit of, what's going
It's an
on.
old school approach. It's like burp.
Oh wow, Guzre Hue Zamane, burp. I'm hearing that name after like 50 million years. But you know, like on
Mm.
Swiggy, it's just come together really, really, really well. And also, I really like that they have integrated Dine Out fully into their app,
So nice. I was
which
just looking at
is
that.
what, in my opinion, Zomato should be doing with Blinkit, and not give Blinkit its own, product and spend more money in customer acquisition, which seems to be what Zomato will do. Because I don't know if you saw, and not that this is a new thing, but Zomato now has grocery as a
Yeah.
tab on its navigation, and their lower bar or
But where? I
whatever.
don't see it.
Oh, it's maybe it's like a Delhi thing, but there
Maybe it's
is
a
like a
thing. It's not here.
grocery.
It's
Yeah,
not in Bombay for
there's
sure.
a grocery tab. But long story short, my and getting back to the other question that I asked of where does Zomato go from here, right? Its bets are very clear. Its
Mm.
AOP seems to be very clear to anyone who has Zomato stock, or even externally,
What is an EOP? Sorry, I'm just like trying to understand.
AOP, annual operating plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, but their integration of grocery onto their app to me signals that over a period of time, the intention with Blinkit will be it needs to be a part of the Zomato experience versus it,
Yeah, little late, no?
floating around outside. Yeah, a little late, and a lot of money spent. But if you were to add anything, right, where do you think Zomato goes from here? How do you think their business expands?
I feel they'll have to kind of expand on these two aspects and see how much deeper they can kind of go. I don't know where their profitability lies. I feel their
Hmm.
profitability will still always be for scale. Like how
Hmm.
much more can you scale? How much more can you include into it? I feel
Yeah.
the like adding the you know just your grocery delivery etc into it could really help their business. I feel at
Hmm.
some point this delivery part, it's like we went through a phase where there were different platforms which were necessarily features, and now
Yeah.
you're getting all of them together on singular apps. It's
Hmm.
going to be a Zomato Swiggy battle for a while, but I feel that's really going to how well can they oil the machinery in the back end in the ops is really what's going
Yeah.
to show how well they do.
Yeah. And with that, let's move to our next story, which is.
So last week we spoke about MyGate, right? And when we spoke about MyGate, we had perspectives on just generally how the company's kind of grown. Was it something that went to try to go much further than a business like this should really go? Interestingly enough, there was an announcement by the MyGate founders saying they've got into a strategic partnership with Urban Company and Acko. So look at it
Mhm.
like services and insurance.
Yeah.
And what this type involves is also it's a strategic partnership. They're both going to get minority stake in MyGate, and people tagged think fast in the comments. So I thought we good to do like a follow up on this and saying that while we spoke about it in deeper context, and anybody who hasn't heard that, please listen to that for broader context on this story. Uh, what's your perspective on this? Because I mean the tie-up makes sense,
Yeah.
but I know that you have
100%.
a deeper perspective on it.
So the only depth I will get into on this story, because guys, I'm so sorry, but I am like extremely tired. I've had the longest week, and I have a long ass session coming up. But I think my the 2 cents that I'll add to this is taking money from strategic partners is always a bit of a catch 22. Like, and I don't know about you, but this is why, for example, like in our case, I was more bullish on either like 100% acquisition, like either you go all in, right, or you do some sort of like tiny minority investment where essentially the bottom line or funding of a company becomes a pool of capital for another company, as what seems to have happened in the case of MyGate. I think the
Mm,
questions that I have over here is I don't know how deep the investment is or isn't, you know what I mean,
yeah,
because no details
yeah.
have been shared. So I don't know if if it's a strategic investment of like 10 crores or like 1,000 crores. But I think in scenarios like this, it's always very tricky taking money from a strategic for multiple different reasons. One, a strategic could always participate in your business, learn from your business, build the same thing. You run into issues like those. The second is it could become a way for a strategic to buy you out over a period of time. To which my question is, why not just, what is the reason to date, right? Why not just jump in on day one? And the third is, if a strategic doesn't end up participating in subsequent rounds, in my opinion, somewhere that does send a bit of a signal to other
Mm,
potential possible investors.
mm,
And I'm not saying it in a good or a bad way, but people end up over analyzing what was wrong with your business that didn't make, Urban Company or Acko invest in it again, blah blah
Yeah.
bullshit. So my, tippany on this would just be taking money from strategics is, it's just a slippery slope, especially if the strategic isn't like a Facebook or a Microsoft types. You know what I mean? It's so big, where it kind of makes sense. But that's the ramble from
I,
me.
I feel that the urban company one is super interesting just because of how urban companies really kind of grown really well. There was a story on a side note on urban companies saying they're pulling out of their expansion plans in Australia because it wasn't really working out for them as
Everyone
much.
does. I mean, think
Yeah,
about it,
even
dude. Like Ola,
yeah,
Misho, everyone tries other territories, but just come
Zomato.
back to good old India. Oh, Zomato, mother of all, dude. Remember the Urban Spoon acquisition?
Yeah.
Guzre hue zamane.
And I feel that the urban company one is super interesting because I think this is one piece that people might actually tap onto the MyGate app for and get
Hmm.
this because it's already part of because I'm talking about as a MyGate consumer and that notifications, but this notification I would kind of like tap into if I was getting a service at a cheaper price. Is something else there?
Hmm.
You tend to kind of tap into those because you already are connected to it.
Yeah.
Might be a great thing for urban company. I don't know how much for Acko. I don't get that
Hmm.
as much. I mean, insurance really on a MyGet app. I don't know. But I mean, you never know how these things kind of play out. But it's interesting. It's I guess looking at the market scenario, this is a something that they must have kind of put together to a kind of sustain, survive, and also find a way to kind of grow as well. Uh,
Yeah.
on another note, what should we take a break now and we should come back, or do we continue? I think we'll take a break. Oh, done two stories already. क्या बात है? आज फटाफट हो रहा है episode. We'll take another break and right back with FTX.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Explain Like I'm 10, Meghna talks to Twitter celeb ROFL Gandhi and stand-up comedian Puneet Panya on what is trolling. On Vartalab, Akash and Raveen are joined by actor Shruti Seth. They talk about the weirdest events they've hosted and their life on social media. On the Musafir Stories, vlogger and YouTuber Antarik Anvesan takes us to India's little Lhasa, McLeodganj. And on Pop Rap, Snehil, Nikhil, and Karan discuss the recently concluded fantasy series House of the Dragon. Don't forget to subscribe to IVM Pop for the latest episodes. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where we are talking about FTX. FTX is not to be confused with FX or FT or
What a great
TX.
introduction to a story that has caused global uproar. Wow, Varun, wow. What hosting skills. My God.
Okay.
Vataj, Lajawab.
Okay, so just for context, right? FTX was literally the SBF, as the founders called Sam Bankman-Fried. He literally is fried right now. Was like the darling of the entire crypto space, right? This guy like literally super young, builds this whole crypto company, then builds the exchange out, and has like this kind of scale to like billions and billions of valuation, gets a ton of investment in there. And now there's
Hmm.
been this like massive like collapse overnight of the entire thing. He's filed for bankruptcy right now. Everybody from a Sequoia to a bunch, like tons of money has gone into it. And it's just like, it's just chaos. But if you dig into how this has happened and what happened, it's even more interesting. But I'll get into those. But first reactions on if you've read any part of the story, what do you think about what's happening here?
I have been capturing parts of this story thanks to my very enthusiastic husband who has been trying to help me understand the length and breadth of this, and I haven't paid much attention. But the biggest loser in all of this is, in my opinion,
No.
and they in any case haven't been having the world's best year with respect to PR, Sequoia men. Like, did you see the screenshots of the investment memo from Sequoia's website?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
they say we have some wins, have some losses, something like that they put down. I saw
No,
that.
dude, that was the thing that they said to basically sort of placate their investors who obviously lost a shit ton of money
Hmm.
because of this FTX crash. But you have to see this. So basically, what happened, and those of you who are on Twitter and are generally hyper on Twitter probably would have already caught this, but Sequoia usually puts up like a investment memo, right? So why did I invest in Varun's company? Blah blah bullshit, bullshit. Like there'll be like a
Hmm.
potha about why you choose to make investments. In my opinion, the biggest loser in all of this is Sequoia. You guys have to go over to their website, and I don't know if they've taken it down, but there are ample screenshots available on the internet. And read the investment memo that they made as to why they chose to invest in FTX and this Sam Fried character, and
Hmm.
their explanation is wild. It is infuriating for like a normal founder, and as people who've potentially put money into Sequoia or put money into you just see how senseless and baseless a lot of investments have been, and how things have been done illogically almost. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on all this, but long story short, I think the biggest loser in all of this has been the general reputation damage that has happened to Sequoia. Will they walk away from it unscathed? Obviously, there have been more terrible things that have happened to Sequoia from a PR perspective in the past year, and they seem to, it seems to be just like a blip in the larger sort of conversations and narratives around that fund. But long story short, in my opinion, biggest loser is actually Sequoia in all of this.
Actually, what about the biggest learning, right? If you look at the biggest problem here, is the fact that you have a company that was initially a fund. You are
Hmm.
creating tokens for people to buy, and then through that you launch an exchange where people can buy and sell tokens.
Yeah.
And at no point has no investor till now actually asked how are these two working together, because imagine the same person owns something which is creating assets and something which
Hmm.
is buying and trading multiple assets.
Hmm.
And what kind of led to this whole piece, there was an article that came out in, I'm just going to tell you the name of the publication because I was reading that article that came out in a publication called CoinDesk, which basically
Hmm.
said that the biggest, I mean, the biggest token that is being sold and held by Alameda, which is the fund which he
Hmm.
owns, was actually, it was generated by so basically the largest asset you hold on an
Hmm.
exchange is basically the asset you have created. So technically, if you look at it, if anything kind of goes down, the whole exchange kind of goes down, which is what happened when
Yeah.
that came out. People started selling it off, saying, "1 second, this thing doesn't have value."
Yeah.
And if this goes up, imagine 40%, 40% of the assets on the exchange were the token he himself created,
Which
which
is
is
wild.
just from
Yeah.
the context of that, and that's what led to it. And the fact that no one tapped into that, and the fact there are employees who are co-employed
Hmm.
in both the companies. People have
Hmm.
IDs for both. People have access to data from both. It is just like I mean, how do you not dig into? I mean, this is basic. This is like diligence 101. No
Yeah.
one's done it. All
But it's just,
because,
I mean,
and not just
look
that.
at
One last
the.
thing. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
One last thing. He also used money that people put into the exchange to
Hmm.
fund investments into startups connected to different aspects,
Hmm.
and some of them have failed in the past as well. So where is that money that people have put in money and that's just kind of been invested somewhere and that's gone? So it's this entire like cluster of nobody, he's just been allowed to spend money however he wants to. I agree on the Sequoia point, but I feel like in general,
Hmm.
where is the diligence?
But that's the problem, no? Like that's literally what happened in the past. Basically, before this funding winter, what the hell was happening all of last year? The amount of money that has been plowed into companies without doing any diligence on the space, without doing any diligence on unit economics, without even doing any diligence on the person. Apparently, this weird character, whatever his face is,
Hmm.
SBF, he was playing some like fucking video game while pitching to Sequoia or some shit. Like
Yeah.
that investment memo is infuriating. Especially as like a founder, like I was very angry while reading it because it's all like, dude, there's so many of us who analyze spaces, walk in with as much data context as is possible. And this little champu, and not to take away credit from what he was able to rally around himself, because storytelling, building these narratives, all of that requires a whole, it's a very like Adam Newman type skill, right? um but it's what you said. It's the very simple fact that apparently FTX had no board of directors. How do you give someone $150 million and not want a board seat? And I think the other big thing is there was generally a lot of like hype around crypto, web3, and whatever else people want to call it. And the biggest problem with that, at least I have, with this space of crypto, web3 plus plus, is the day to day application and functionality of it is still so nondescript, that how this technology or whatever else will genuinely percolate or permeate into the lives of consumers seems to be a big question mark all around. So I have a lot of thoughts on crypto. I don't think crypto is going to be able to, I don't think the crypto world will be able to bounce back from this blow as seamlessly as is possible. And this isn't the only one, right? We've all heard like crypto horror stories through the course of the year.
This one last part of this is that there's a learning from how the internet was made. And
Hmm.
everybody said, crypto is going to be the next thing, the metaverse is going to be the
Yeah.
next thing. The internet was made by scientists who made it for communication, not for profit.
Hmm.
And they built it in that way, which is why it sustained through all of this. The problem with crypto, with the metaverse, etc., is that from day one, you're building it for profit.
Hmm.
And so what ends up happening is you want to own as much of it as possible, which means some of the decisions you make will be questionable in many cases. And at some point, while it's deregulated in that sense of the word, regulation is required. You need old school thought process to kind of build it out right.
Hmm.
Until that happens, both of these spaces,
Yeah.
which are almost like running in parallel towards the future in that sense, will go through this again and again and again, because you cannot, if you go from this thing individual profit, not even just like overall profit, individual profit, if that's the
Hmm.
focus, you're never going to be able to build this out in the way in which it will scale and become like almost like a universal standard of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah. A regulation is coming, but let's move on to the next story.
Yes. What is the next story? What's the next story?
Meta layoffs
Meta
very
layoffs.
quickly.
Yes. Yes. So Meta laid off 11,000 employees to cut costs. Mark Zuckerberg, in his letter, admitted that he made the wrong call. 2019, and this is an interesting thing if you look at the early pandemic period, right? When everything was going digital, he made this huge bet onto the metaverse, and suddenly all of tech went on this hiring spree, not even a spree, extravaganza, right?
Yeah.
And a
Lost
lot
the
of the
plot.
cuts that have really happened have
Is
happened.
rationalization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting article about this on Mark Zuckerberg saying that maybe this is the time for him to
Hmm.
move to a chairman role and to get an operational CEO,
Hmm.
primarily because what you need at the helm when a company is this size is an operator, not an innovator,
Yep.
as CEO.
Agree. Yep.
And this is the biggest problem they have. Look at all other companies. No one's talking about Amazon in this way. Also,
Yeah.
look at the kind of bets he's making. Investors are like literally they're half of their share price before he announced the whole shift to Meta. It's
Yeah.
a sign, and at some level you got to take off. But also, I think it's also sad because such great talent has really lost jobs. I mean, they've some great people across the board. Same like what's happened to Twitter, have
Yeah.
been losing jobs.
Yeah, obviously, one big part of this is just the crazy, rapid pace at which companies have been hiring. And I think the problem is when you hire without clarity on, operational structures or needs. This is exactly what happens, right? But without, saying the more obvious things, which I just did right now, I hope the one outcome of all of this is rationalization in salaries, because it last year was just bonkers. I think all of
Mm.
us know enough stories of enough people who were offered, dude, I understand 30% hike, 50% hike, in some cases, sure, there could even be a correction. But
Mm.
paying people absurd amounts of money without them being able to justify, there's this saying in large organizations, right, that there's this, in every organization there's this category of people called the quote unquote well fed people, right? These are people who are earning a little bit more than they really should, can't necessarily always justify their compensations. It's easier for a business or a company to manage situations like that when it's limited to, select few people or select few employees. But I think the problem that happened world over was everyone was quote unquote well fed, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, like every single an average person was being hired at, compensations that are just absolutely not okay and not justifiable by any, unit economic benchmark.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest loser in all of this really is, sorry, but employees, people who took
Yeah.
jobs, with the lust of money, who are now paying the price of, not being able to justify their comp, not being able to justify the value that they're adding to organizations. And unfortunately, this is what happens, man. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, but that would be my 2 cents on this meta
Yes.
layoff story.
Yes, and for the last story of this week, there's been an interesting development in Bombay. Bombay has never been spoken about in recent years as being this hub for startups, especially on the tech space, etc. 35 top unicorn or going to be unicorn founders have come together to set up something called Team, which is Tech Entrepreneurs Association of Mumbai. It's being led by the Dream Sports founder Harsh Jain and Haptic founder Akrit Vesh, and they're basically trying to kind of they're trying to make Bombay or rather Mumbai a more conducive place for startups to kind of function out of. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
work with policymakers, want to work with regulators, just kind of figure the ecosystem. And I think it's about time. And it's an interesting set. Also, Akrit, someone like I've met in the past, and he's super sharp and understands the tech space. I've seen him grow Haptic from what it is to the
He's
Reliance.
a really like nice, motivated guy.
Yeah, he's lovely. And I remember, I mean, we worked with him when he was just relaunching the app, when they just kind of figured that whole piece out and they're moving
Hmm.
towards the AI chain. And then obviously got acquired by Reliance and Geo sometime later as well, or rather acquired or invested into one of the other. But
Hmm.
I think he's one of the right people to do this because he understands this space, understands the Mumbai ecosystem. But there's a lot that has to be done if you have to really boost it up here because infrastructure is the biggest problem. But it's also a problem which I think that I mean, Bangalore has its own set of problems with traffic, etc. But how's the Delhi ecosystem? I think this whole city ecosystem is going to become an interesting thing to track for some time.
So I don't know, man. I think the number one reason why I love being a founder in Delhi is you just have space. You're not in each
Mm.
other's face all the time. Like
Yeah.
you can, genuinely check out from the startup scene as and when you want. I think Bangalore is like I could not stay in Bangalore. I would lose my mind if I was around so much chitter chatter, like keng cuckoo, like it would just drive me mad. I think Bombay, the good thing with Delhi is because Delhi has space and Delhi is, as large, especially when you include all of NCR, in measuring how you look at the, ecosystem and startups in Delhi. I think the great thing is it's a tight community. People,
Mm.
do interact, meet with each other when needed. But what I love about Delhi is that you can break away and think and stay in peace, as much as possible as well. I think the problem with Bombay is there just genuinely aren't enough startups.
There's
Bangalore
enough
has
space.
yeah, dude, I think like Pawai, the irony of the situation is you guys have all the things that it takes to be startup central. So for
Yeah.
example, you've got IIT, you guys have got great liberal art colleges. Bombay obviously has the best density of consumer brands
Mm.
coming out of India, right? Like your best
Yeah.
consumer brands end up being largely Bombay based. So I don't think it's a space issue. I don't know. I don't know what ended up happening to Bombay and where it got lost in the grander scheme of things.
I feel it's more than anything else, it's the base level infrastructure that's the problem. For you to
Hmm.
go from one place to the other, for you to be able to get things done, it is very complicated. And having built and run a business in Bombay, I have to tell you that it is navigating that part of it becomes very difficult. And when I talk to a founder, for instance, in Hyderabad, for instance, I think it's a fabulous hub.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the way they've built that whole space out.
Hyderabad, Pune, they're all coming up well.
Yeah, even Chennai, I've been hearing really interesting things about how a part
Yep.
of Chennai is kind of really grown
SAS.
to that. Yeah, and I feel there's a lot to learn from that. But
Hmm.
Bombay, unfortunately, because there are some industries that have obviously have large scale, so people only look at those here. tech got taken away. But I
Hmm.
agree, just the density of good people who are still available here, but now are really running off. They're running off to Delhi NCR, running off to Bangalore, especially Bangalore.
Yeah.
I'm seeing this like exodus of talent from Bombay, just going to
Hmm.
work for companies in Bangalore, or really companies just moving to Bangalore.
Hmm.
I guess it's the right time to do this and kind of reshape it, but it's going to be tough to do. It's going to be very tough to do. Just like looking at the way the city is right now, and even like I would just say the base level infrastructure. I mean, we're way far away from being welcoming or rather even helping startups build over here.
Yeah, but dude, kudos to the both of them, man. I think it's great. I love when people take initiative,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to dealing with the government and infra bodies and this, that, and the other. So good on you, Harsh Jain and Akrit Vesh. This is great.
And with that, we're going to go for our last break and be right back with recommendations. Welcome back to Think Fast. What are we recommending? What are we recommending this week?
Varun,
I
this
am
this week you go
recommending
first.
I'm
Yes.
recommending get yourself a nice crispy vada with sambar and chutney, guys. It is the best thing you can do for your soul. Get that rice crispiness in there. Feel it melts in your mouth. Soak in that sambar and that yummy chutney.
Why do you
That is
make
my
everything
recommendation.
sound so dirty? Again, there we go. All over again, bro. But while Varun, I don't even know what to say at this point in time, drools and dreams about his crispy vada with some like exotic chutney. My recommend. By the way, is that your actual recommendation?
No, it's not my
What are
actual
you bringing to the
recommendation.
table, man? Come on, Varun.
My
What's our actual
actual
recommendation?
recommendation this week is actually an interesting new podcast. It's called the Dhar and
Take a
Jay Show.
pause.
No, Dhar and Jay
Oh.
Show, which is basically Jay Shetty and Dhar Singh, if I remember, I forget his full name. Um, Doing this entire new podcast series, rather interview series on YouTube, where they're talking to all creators, but they're talking to creators about them and not about how they create, etc. All that stuff. It's a great insight into just the headspace of like even from Mr. Beast to Kali and everybody else. I think it's an interesting one to kind of just watch and listen to. Also because two really large creators having these
Mhm.
conversations. I thought the Mr. Beast episode was super interesting. Just to understand how he functions in his head and etc. So
Yeah.
that would be my recommendation.
Okay, so just saying it again, you mean the Dhar and
Dhar.
Jay
I'm pronouncing how he pronounces it.
show. I swear on my head, I thought you said something in Bengali. Like I thought
Dhar
you
and
said
Jay
Dhar
Shah.
and Jay show.
Dhar
Yeah.
and Jay Shah.
Yeah. Okay,
Welcome to the
got
Dhar
it.
and Jay Show. My
Okay.
trying to do my American accent here.
Lovely.
Dhar and Jay
Uh,
Show.
we heard you the first time, my friend. We heard you the first time. Varun is really like in the zone today, dude. I love this like switch around of energy. Like today,
This is what
Varun's
happens
just
when you
like,
drink a bottle of
guys.
wine by yourself last night while watching Brahmastra.
Oh my god.
I would
What
not
was
recommend
this?
Amitabh Bachchan's haircut in that movie. I would not recommend that haircut.
Oh my god. Okay, guys, I did not. I did have three margaritas, which explains why I'm so slow this morning. But I'm going to recommend this website first and foremost. Credit to Dhruv Mathur, who always finds cool things and shares them with me, and then I just take credit for finding them in the first place. But there's this very cool website called wearecollins.com,
Mm,
and just go to their like tab called ideas. This basically, this guy called Brian Collins, he's written like 101 random musings, ramblings and the likes. And he's just like, it's kind of like spark notes for
mm,
things that you've learned over the course of your life. And they're all very like funny and interesting, and also all very real. So for example, I posted a screenshot of this yesterday, but as a part of his 101 principles, he writes, I've learned that there are only two kinds of people who do exactly what they say they'll do, and people who are full of shit. So he basically has these like really fun, like clickbaity takeaways from his experience in life. But it's interesting going through it because
mm.
while you're reading it, you're just like, dude, hundo, yeah, like I totally agree with this little tippany that you've put down, and this has kind of inspired me to begin creating principles of my own. Have you tried this, by the way? You're a journaler, right? Like do you
Yeah,
journal
yeah.
these musings, ramblings?
So I have two journals. One is like a notebook regular one, and the other one I do is the daily stoic journal, which I really like. It's like a bit of like a question every day, so you try to answer it. But when you said we are Collins, in my head I imagine people who are a community of people who use Collins spray and start cleaning their house. We are
Oh my
Collins.
God. Jesus. What the fuckity
This
fuck,
is what I
fuck,
do on
fuck.
weekends. We are
Oh
Collins.
my God.
ये देखिए मेरा kitchen counter.
Thank you for taking all the depth away from my recommendation and making it about a Susu Blue spray that people use to clean their glass surfaces. Thanks,
Susu
Varun.
Blue is
Thanks.
what is the term of this episode, guys. And I think, don't you have to go somewhere? You have like a book club.
Yeah, I do have to go. I don't have a book club, guys. I'm taking a session for Leap Club members on how to think of content and brand to like leverage, what it is that you're trying to build. So I've made a 56 slide presentation and I'm going to take some very excited people through my
You know what I'm going to
56
do?
slide presentation.
I'm
Fart,
going to. I bought
take a
a
dump,
I bought a
drink a bottle of
3D
wine and
pen.
watch
I bought a
Brahmastra
3D
again.
pen, which is basically it's like a 3D printer, but works through it's like a cheap pen. Me and Leah are going to make some
What
weird
is
shit out of it.
wrong with you? Dude, I swear. Varun is like, what do you. I love your retirement life.
Yeah,
It
it's
really is the
amazing.
best.
It's the
But with
best.
that, bye, guys.
Yes. Okay, bye guys. Toodles. No Susu Blue. Please do Susu Blue this weekend. Clean your kitchen counter, and we will
Oh
see you
my
guys next week.
God. Bye, friends.
Bye.